Aljamain Sterling has already started searching for his next opponent for the UFC Bantamweight Championship after defeating TJ Dillashaw in a successful title defense. And while we have no way of knowing who will come up in this conversation, a few names have been mentioned as those who have emerged victorious. Who exactly? Let's dive in. Okay, so let's talk about UFC 280.
These are things you dream about, you work so hard for, but you're always unknown. The future's unknown.
Aljamain Sterling defeated TJ Dillashaw in his title defense to retain the UFC Bantamweight Championship. Sean O'Malley defeated Petr Yan in one of the most incredible fights in UFC history. It was a close fight. It could have gone to any of the three judges and been a legitimate decision. After UFC 280 was over, UFC President Dana White didn't declare the new #1 contender at 135 pounds. We still need to find out who's up next for Aljamain Sterling. However, White did mention former champion Henry Cejudo, who came out of retirement and rejoined the active roster in April, as one possibility. If Henry Cejudo wants to fight Aljamain Sterling, he must get in line. What about Sean O'Malley?
No, I don't smoke fight week. I usually, that last fight I was, I think 3-4 weeks out.
According to Aljamain Sterling, O'Malley has done everything he's supposed to do to earn a title shot, which is a fair point. After all, O'Malley did take on the former bantamweight champ Petr Yan, and despite some controversy, he came out on top. Sure, it wasn't a clear and decisive victory, but neither was Aljamain Sterling's defeat of Petr Yan, so he's not exactly in a position to judge. O'Malley did earn it. I can't deny that, Sterling said. Even Dana White said you beat the #1 contender, so it made sense, and then somehow, someway, he backtracked. I'm not sure if he thought my fight wasn't going to go that way, and I'm not sure if he thought the Yan-O'Malley fight would go that way as far as being so competitive. He probably thought somebody would get stopped and then, this guy needs to fight for the title. That's usually how it works. It's usually the performance, but it was a great performance from both guys. Both guys fought their ass. They got fight of the night. So I don't see why either one should have been denied that follow-up, the claim that Dana made that whoever won would be next, and he threw Cejudo in there. In terms of the excitement factor, it's hard to argue that an Aljamain Sterling versus Sean O'Malley bout wouldn't be one of the most highly anticipated fights of 2021. The UFC Bantamweight champ knows how to sell a fight, and O'Malley has the same skill set. He's got the confidence of a champion and the charisma to match, which is why his star power is skyrocketing.
That's what I was told. I think 20 more seconds, they said it would have been considered gone to the scorecards, which I was completely...
What has Cejudo had to say about this?
The dude just grinds. That's all he does. He's not going to fight you. He's not going to strike with you.
Cejudo has called for the fight against Sterling, and he's also turned his attention towards O'Malley, suggesting an interim title go up for grabs. That might seem like an odd request, but it seems like Henry Cejudo wants to go up against Sterling. Repeatedly calling him out seems like a clear path, according to Henry Cejudo. He's hell-bent on getting a match with the current bantamweight champion. Despite this fact, and the fact that Dana White mentioned this as a potential fight, Sterling isn't all that enthusiastic about the potential matchup. So, what did Sterling have to say about this?
Okay guys, so the news has broke that I'm going to be fighting TJ Dillashaw, aka...
When it comes to potentially skipping over O'Malley and facing Cejudo instead, Sterling admits he's not enthusiastic about that potential matchup. Still, it has nothing to do with one fight being more difficult or demanding than the other. I'm just not excited about that matchup with Henry Cejudo, Sterling said, because he hasn't competed. If the fans cared, like really cared, the overall consensus was this is the matchup to make. Cejudo, you are the guy. I'm calling you out. That's the money fight because people want to see that fight. I just don't feel like that's it. If O'Malley is the biggest name coming off the win, now the #1 guy, I don't see why he shouldn't get the fight. People are going to say, you want the easier fight. I don't get how that fight's easy. He's long, he's rangy, and he's got great footwork. He can crack. I don't see how it's an easy fight by any means. It's hard to disagree with that statement. O'Malley is a star on the rise, and Cejudo, while still a big name in UFC, has been inactive for over a year. Yes, he's got the clout to his name, but this guy has yet to be active and hasn't competed. Since O'Malley is the biggest name right now and is coming off the win, it doesn't seem like he should be skipped over for a potential title shot.
Training, gaming, doing my thing. I haven't even thought about who I'm fighting next.
What other reasons does Sterling want to fight O'Malley?
Right now, I'm just fully focused on him. There's some big matchups, a lot of guys in the wings, a lot of guys deserving of a title shot, so...
Sterling is known for admitting that he wants to fight for money, and this time is no different. In a recent interview, Sterling said he would like to fight O'Malley because it would be a bigger money fight than Cejudo. This is a point that many people believe valid, with potentially the exception of Dana White. Sterling knows that O'Malley will draw interest from fans in a way that Cejudo doesn't, which means both fighters stand to benefit on the back end of any pay-per-view card where they clash. Sterling is honest enough to confess that money has to play into decisions made by fighters, and as of right now, many fans want to see Sean O'Malley take him on. If this is where the cash is at and Sterling is right, it seems obvious that the UFC will book this fight sooner rather than later. With O'Malley being the biggest draw in the bantamweight division, it's hard to imagine that the UFC wouldn't want to capitalize on this opportunity. Admittedly, Dana White doesn't seem to think this, as he mentioned Henry Cejudo as the potential next fight for the bantamweight champ. But what exactly did Sterling have to say about this? If I lose the belt, and when I lose it at some point, I will lose it. You stay in this game long enough, someone will beat you. It's just guaranteed to happen, bound to happen, Sterling explained. Father Time is undefeated. Every dog has their day. I've lost before. I know what defeat feels like. I'm not a god. I'm not invincible. Sometimes people just have a better night, and at this moment, I get pay-per-view points.
And still, baby, what's up?
Not many guys defend.
Sterling knows that O'Malley will sell a lot of pay-per-views, and that means he stands to make a lot of money from a potential title fight. For him, it's just good business sense to take on the man who is most likely to sell the most pay-per-views at this moment in time. As Sterling explained, he knows he will either lose or retire eventually. He's not invincible and wants to make as much money as possible during his prime. And can you blame him? The UFC is all business. Although fans want to see certain matchups, the ones that get made are the ones that pay. Still, there's also a legitimate claim for Cejudo for this match.
I came here, guys. This victory, and I said it before, it was much bigger.
What about Cejudo's claim to the match?
What do I gotta do? I gotta do WWE to be a pro wrestler? Is that what it is?
I think what distinguishes...
Although O'Malley might be the biggest draw, Henry Cejudo might have a greater claim to this fight. This is because undefeated Cejudo retired from MMA while still the UFC bantamweight champion. He also handed Petr Yan his first professional loss, a feat in and of itself. Sterling, of course, still views O'Malley as the #1 contender and hopes that Cejudo will take on another fighter before stepping into the octagon with him, though not because he was scared at the fight. If we're finally going to use the merit system, it should be O'Malley. That's what I think, Sterling said, and it's a fair point, according to many fans and MMA analysts. Although Henry Cejudo is a legitimate fight for Sterling and has some star power, it's decreased over time during his retirement. For this reason, Sterling just doesn't seem as interested in the fight at the moment, and you can't blame him.
We take so much for granted in this world. Walking, our eyesight.
Okay, let's sum it up.
That's what it's got to be, man. I've learned to do that over my career and even through wrestling, so that's the same thing.
So Sterling's point is that with Cejudo being inactive for over a year, and with O'Malley being the one who beat the former champion Petr Yan, Sean O'Malley should be next in line for a title shot.
Home to Tim's gyms here, and I don't see us ever not living near.
It's hard to disagree with Sterling on this one. Although Henry Cejudo has earned his shot at the title, it seems it might be too soon to put him up against Sterling. The only question is if fans want to see O'Malley so soon after that controversial victory over Yan, and if the UFC will book the fight for a future card. You never know what can happen in the world of MMA, but what are your thoughts on this? Which fight would you be more excited for, and who would you ideally want to see Aljamain Sterling fight next? Let us know in the comment section down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you in the next one.